Hey, what's up, guys? Node Investor here. So, another live edition of the charts, looking at the charts, checking out the price action in BTC. Just curious. So, I did a live stream late my time yesterday. It was about 11 p.m. or so till around a little after midnight. How many of you here today now were with me during that live stream? Just curious to see how many of the crazies are with us. How many of the diehards? Oh man, let's see here. So I'm checking out some of these comments. So I'm going to look at BTC, of course, look at some levels that I was watching here, and we'll go from there. I am looking for the bounce. You were there. A few of you guys were there. Oh man, cool. Yeah, I was looking at the charts last night after the live stream was over, and I was thinking, should I buy this dip? Should I do an oversold bounce play? And I thought, you know what? I'm going to get some sleep. And so I decided not to, and didn't miss much. Unfortunately, the price continues to drop. We are seeing a pretty brutal sell-off across the board here, and the acceleration is kicking into the downside. But I am starting to see some signs of washing out here in the near term. And so that's what I want to point out. And, you know, we've seen this. We saw a similar pullback here a few weeks back, right, where the 4-hour was just very oversold, but it went that way for quite some time, right? So it's always hard to guess where that low is ultimately going to be. This happened to land right around a key support area. We finally did see a bounce, but it was choppy nonetheless. And then we're seeing this again here as the price acceleration to the downside really starts to pick up. And so looking at that, volume here is pretty high now. It's starting to pick up on a lot of exchanges in this most recent 4-hour bar. Has a little less than an hour left in it, so we will see this 4-hour bar close during this live stream. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. Do we bounce? Do we see any kind of rally before then? The RSI on this 4-hour is at 18, so just under 19 here, 18.85. We've seen a pretty good dip. It was a little bit lower just a little while ago. And so looking at that 30-minute chart here, you can see this is on Bitfinex. I'll cycle through some of the other exchanges here in a sec, but just look at the volume here in the last few hours here, just really picking up here at these lows. There's a little bit of a battle happening here. And so for those that watched the live stream yesterday, let me go to Bitstamp here. I'll point out some of the levels that we were watching yesterday. You can see here the volume on Bitstamp is also really picking up here at these lows. And so usually when you see volume spike after a big move down and the price really accelerates to the downside, that is generally positive just because it shows a little bit of a near-term capitulation. Does it mean that's the low? Does it mean that the daily chart is done going down? Not necessarily, absolutely not, and it's too soon to tell. But in the short term, we're starting to see a little bit of a capitulation, maybe some seller exhaustion here. So that's kind of what I wanted to point out. So this is the level I was watching going into yesterday, which of course we breached, right? And that was that 8K down to around the lows here, being around that 7,800, slightly below. And during the stream yesterday, we were testing that. We were starting to undercut it a little bit. And then here today in the last few hours, we have certainly seen that pull back. Now, I did mention that there was a small support level, not a huge support level, but certainly a small support level around that 786 fib retracement level in and around that 7,400 mark, which just happens to be, you know, this little top here, but that's very short-lived. It's not a huge level, so not going to give it a lot of weight, but we're seeing a little bit of a bounce show up into that zone here with some pretty decent volume. So not a bounce, excuse me, a pause to the downside. It's definitely not bouncing yet. At this point, it's just a pause, and it's just because we're so stretched to the downside by most time frames here. If you look at the moving average, this is on the 30-minute chart. I mean, look at even on the 30-minute, we were pretty stretched to the downside, just the crazy volume showing up there. But there is an attempt, right? You're seeing these little wicks starting to show up here on this 30-minute as prices dip below 7,500. But near term, we're going to need to see some upside confirmation. If we do see a little bit of a rally start to show up here, the level that I'm watching here is going to be that support that broke down, and it's going to be the new resistance level now. So if we do see a rally going into that that $7,700 mark, it's going to be the first resistance level, and then ultimately 8K, that psychological mark. I don't expect to get above that on a first bounce attempt. It's going to be a little bit more of a process on this 4-hour chart. If this is a low, we'll probably see a rally, maybe a pullback, maybe a higher low type of double bottom, and then maybe a test above that. So just taking it one bar at a time at this point. If you're doing the bounce trades and that sort of thing, this is kind of the area to be watching here, this most recent support around that 7,400, just above 7,400. But like I said, this RSI is just so washed out. Doesn't necessarily mean it's a buy signal in and of itself, but it just starts to tell you that, hey, maybe we've gone a little too far, too fast, and we're going to see some sort of a counter trend rally. You can see we had that similar action here not too long ago. Where was it? Here we go. Where we had the RSI on the 4-hour dip down into the 20 range, slightly below intrabar, and then we saw here the bounce happen shortly thereafter. So I'm expecting a bounce today within this daily bar, which is about 5 hours away from closing. But the question is always, from what price are we going to bounce from? Does it keep going lower first and then we see the bounce, right? And that's always the risk in trying to guess where that bottom is ultimately going to be. If we look at the daily chart here, you can see the prices currently are down about 8% from the 10 EMA. And so it's not exactly extremely stretched to the downside, but it is starting to get a little stretched here to the downside. Unfortunately, the RSI on the daily still has room to go if it's going to be one of those bars that really kind of wash down all the way to the 30 or sub 30 mark. I don't think we'll see that in the current daily bar. We'll likely see a little bit of a bounce first and then maybe another leg down. So just being cautious there. Unfortunately, this break of a key support here in and around that 8K is significant, and we broke it on pretty decent volume. And so that is starting to put the big picture bull in question here, right? So this one big bar was not really support. That was just kind of the big move off the bottom, and we needed to hold this level on the pullback. We didn't. Now we're testing this. If we finish here, it would technically still be a higher low, but that's a pretty deep retracement. And if you go to the weekly chart here, it just, there's a lot of time left on this weekly, and so there's really no way to tell. It's going to be really dependent on how this daily plays out over the next few days. Could it reverse and turn into a big support bar? It could, but you're asking for a lot at that point. You're looking for a close above, 8,500 or near that, and that's a big move from where we're at right now. So on the daily, what I would be looking for, the positive here would be if this support is recaptured on a closing basis today. So that would mean we would need to close back above this $7,900 mark or so. And what that would do is turn this daily candle that we see right now into a big reversal hammer, even if it closed in the red. But if it closed near the highs with the volume that we're seeing, would actually be very positive, would set up a pretty good support day, and would likely mean that, hey, maybe this was the near-term low. And so that's really the best case that I'm looking for today, is if we get a little bit of a rally back on some strong volume and close near the highs. We've got 5 hours, a little less now, 4.5 hours before that happens. So that's what I'm going to be looking out for. And that will really change the picture for me right now. But if it closes like this, near the lows or even lower, it's going to really question this broader move we saw up. And I would not be surprised to see a retest of this 7K level at that point, because just the retracement has been so deep. So don't want to be so bearish on you guys, but you got to go with the market, what the market's saying, and change the assessment as things progress. So that's what we're looking at right now. Let me think. I was going to cover a few more things on Bitcoin before I moved on. Oh, well, I will likely remember here, but for now, let's cycle through some of the other charts that I'm watching here. So covered. I'll just go through the big names here first. Looking at ETH. Now this one has been pretty strong versus BTC here in the last couple of weeks, but we're finally seeing a break of that trend. And you can see yesterday was really the big break signal. We were going up, pausing, still holding the moving average on a closing basis, and then broke below that. And so that's starting, to me, that's signaling that we're going to start to see some more correction on the ETH BTC pair. First support is going to be around, that's 735 level or so, which is this consolidation here. And then below that, this prior consolidation. So around 66 down to maybe 64.5 or something. So that's what I'm looking for. It would be a normal pullback after a very strong run for several weeks. You can see this was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, almost 7. That one barely turned red, but almost 7 green weeks in a row. And so seeing a little bit of a pullback would not be unusual. But that one certainly is looking like it's turning the corner here. Litecoin, I talked about Litecoin yesterday. Looking at close support here on the BTC side, and it's dipping below that. If it closes above, that'd be positive, but right now it's not looking very strong here. This one has been lagging. You can see we're at the low end of this range. We were breaking below that earlier today. We're trying to rally, so unless it can really turn around here, I'm going to be really cautious on Litecoin. Looking at Litecoin USD pair, let me go to we'll get Bitfinex here. I mean, it's almost fully retraced this entire move, and it's right back down here near the lows around that 120 mark. And the must-hold level, again, is those March, April lows around 112, 110. So it's really close to that. So we're going to want to see Litecoin hold up here. But again, this one has been lagging for the last couple of weeks and has not really been leading on the way up. So let me see here. Let me go through some of these comments. And ladies and gentlemen, smash that like button. Who's buying here? Are you guys buying? Anybody buying this dip? I mean, it's one thing to trade, by the bounce trades, but who's buying for like long-term buys? Holding, hodling. 72.70 looks to be the bounce level. We'll check that out. 7K bounce. Can't access any of your funds. Okay. Ouch. Buying into the weakness. What does the volume profile look like? I want to cover that. That's a really good point. I was having a discussion with around those volume indicators here earlier today with somebody, and I want to point some things out to you guys here. You never sold crypto in your life. Good for you. HODL. You're buying long-term here? Cool. You're buying the dip for the 10th time. Oh, man. I hear you. Let me see. You want to buy EOS and OMG? We will look at those. Some of those charts are definitely oversold near term versus BTC, but is it the long term? That's always the question here, right? You like Bitcoin Cash around 900? So yeah, we'll definitely look at the charts here. I'll make a list. Let me open up a separate file here so I can start keeping track of which ones we're going to look at, and we'll go from there. And it's interesting with this correction that we're seeing. I mean, there's been some news, but not like crazy amounts of news. And it's just kind of been the normal, we saw a cease and desist order yesterday from the SEC or 2 days ago, but that was for a small altcoin. Maybe it sent some ripples through the system, but we saw or heard of Vitalik being pursued by Google. But is that really a surprise? I mean, these big companies kind of going after guys like Vitalik. Not really, but it's just interesting to see that's happening. And there was some concern around, hey, what happens if he takes his focus off of the project right now? And that'd be something here. So kind of keeping up with some of these ripples. ELF, the eCoin ETF. All right, so let me go back to that volume comments because I want to cover that, and that's a pretty good point to be made here. Let me go to here on the daily chart, volume on Bitfinex, and of course, this is just one exchange. If you look at like Coin Market Cap, it tells you 24-hour BTC volume, and you can look at historical data. And a lot of people have been kind of pointing out the fact that, and let me go to the weekly, might show it a little bit better, right? The fact that, hey, this volume has just really been dropping off. I mean, look at the overall trend. The volume is just really drying up. And absolutely, it has been coming down. But we got to remember, too, that this is coming off of some incredibly high numbers, even historically speaking, right? And it tends to spike during the extreme price action, of course. And so going into Q4, I mean, volume was the highest that we had seen. But if you look at the historical average and kind of the average, even just for 2017, the volume on average for most of the year going into like September is really when it started to pick up, September, October. But for most of the year, average daily volume for Bitcoin was trading between $1 and $2 billion a day. And it wasn't until Q4 that we really saw a jump in that. And of course, in December, we saw the extreme end of that, where average daily volume in December was $13 billion a day. So it shot way up there. And January was still pretty high. But since then, it's kind of been what I would call normalizing a little bit back to kind of normal price averages. Clearly, the correction, the bear market that we've been in for the last 5 months has worn out a lot of traders and investors. And so the folks that were jumping in right at the highs here have been shaken out. And so you're seeing a lot of that volume kind of trickle away because of that. There's another aspect, right? The OTC market is really picking up. So maybe that has something to do with it there. But I don't expect us to go back down to the lows that we saw in early 2017, around $1 billion, $2 billion a day, 24-hour volume for Bitcoin. But I do see it coming down to a little bit more normalized level, and maybe it'll settle around that $4 to $5 billion a day. All across the board, I think volume will continue to increase, but you are seeing some drop in volume, and so that's something that people have been pointing out. But you just got to keep in mind that it's coming off of all-time highs, and to be honest, very extreme highs, right? We very quickly moved from $2 billion a day up to tens of $10 billion plus a day. So we're just kind of coming off of that. So a little bit of some of the mania volume that we were seeing here towards the highs. And again, there's more alternatives, right, than just the crypto exchanges that you and I are familiar with. Now there's different exchanges coming online. There's traditional markets that are going to start opening up exchanges, and we see it almost every week now, right? It's like another stock exchange, another commodity exchange says, hey, we're going to start supporting crypto. And so that's going to also, create different options for people to buy crypto, as opposed to going to Coinbase or Binance or one of these, kind of more established crypto names. So just a thought on the volume there. All right, let's see here. So I'm going to start cycling through some of these charts. I'm just checking out the comments here, see if there's anything that I'm missing. And we will try to cover as many as we can. My plan is to keep this to about an hour today. I was on a private stream earlier and got to try to save my voice here. All right, so I'm going to just cycle through some of the big names first here. So we did ETH, we did Litecoin. Let's do Bitcoin Cash here. And so looking at that one versus BTC first, still pulling in quite a bit versus BTC. Again, this one had a very strong run off of the lows. I mean, we were up almost 100% versus Bitcoin. And so now we're seeing some that pullback here. And it is also a little bit oversold near term. You can see we're doing a little bit of a bounce attempt here off of these lows. On the 4-hour chart is definitely hitting some oversold conditions there. 1-hour chart starting to see some volume come in a little bit. So it is looking like it bounces a little bit here. Let me do a quick analysis on this guy. That happens to be Not quite the 618 level, but it's pretty close here. We saw a little dip below that, so it's kind of right in the middle there at the 50% retracement. And there really isn't a lot of big support in this section here. I mean, look at that, was just a pretty much straight up move, and the last big base of support is going to be between here and here. So that's really the level to watch if it continues lower versus Bitcoin. Is going to be this area. Now, near term, it is a little bit stretched to the downside, so I do expect to see a little bit of a bounce versus Bitcoin. It was down earlier today, almost 12% from the 10 EMA. And so that's what I'm looking for, but that's really going to be the next level of support at this point. And you'll see the same trend with most of these names. They're oversold, and I'm just kind of looking for some support. Are they long-term entries? Are they dips? I mean, there's nothing that's going to tell us, for most names, there's nothing that's going to say, hey, this is a confirmed bottom. I mean, it's probably a bounce at this point on a lot of these names, but the bottom process is going to take more than a day to play out, right? It's not going to be, in most cases, a straight up move from here, right? It'll be a bounce. Maybe we retest the lows, and then we'll go from there. And so that's what you want to look out for. And ultimately, it's got to get back above this moving average. I mean, that's kind of the early signal that the trend is changing when we start living above that. And for now, it's just really been below that in a lot of these names. EOS. So I'm going to do EOS dollar first here. Once EOS broke below this moving average on very big volume, it's certainly just kind of been trickling down. We bounced right into the moving average again, and here we are breaking lower. We were looking at a potential support zone here. It was a small support zone, and I mentioned that last time. The next level down is here. That's between like $9.50 down to around $9 is the next strong support. But that's a big pullback considering it was at 20 bucks not that long ago here. And looking at EOS versus BTC, again, just bouncing. This lines up pretty well with that break on the dollar chart there, and just moving below this moving average here, right at the 50% retracement here. But really the level to be watching is this zone here, which is the next base, and that lines up with the 618 level there. So that's a few more percent to the downside here. If it's going to hold, that's about 8 to 12% on the BTC pair versus on EOS. Just checking some of these out. So let's do Ripple. You guys are asking about Ripple there. And haven't looked at this one here. Clear that there. So looking at Ripple versus Bitcoin again, this was one that was sitting pretty tight here. Once it broke, just stair-stepping its way lower, and it's giving up a lot of this big move it had in April, and just fully retracing mostly now. We're back at this key support here. You can see we touched it there, lived below it, broke above. Here we are, and we're testing it again, but definitely not looking strong. I mean, it's just making lower highs on that daily chart. Could it bounce here? Absolutely, right? But it's just the bigger picture is not very strong on the Ripple BTC pair. XRP dollar, doing Bitfinex, looking pretty rough, but that lines up with the Bitcoin story, right? If Bitcoin's pulling in that much and Ripple's underperforming by even more, then you're seeing this dollar really just kind of give it up. And the next level down to be watching this support level is around that 55-cent mark on the Ripple pair, but also a little bit oversold near term. Look at this 4-hour. I mean, the RSI on this 4-hour was here at 20s, and we're seeing some very big volume as this tries to bounce off of that mark here. So would not surprise me to see Ripple bounce into maybe 62 to 65 cents here near term. That would be the first level of resistance that I'd be watching, and that'd be about 8 to 10% bounce. And you can see that's pretty clear level of support that was broken on that dollar charts. And so that's going to now be resistance on the way up. So anywhere into this zone is going to be where I expect to see some near-term profit take place here if it does start to bounce. Carnage, hodl. Yeah, I know, man. It is carnage out there. Oh, we're going to 5K. Man, nobody wants 5K. We don't want Tone Vase to win his bet. Is it going to sub 6 prices? What do you guys think? I need to throw a poll out on Twitter to see if how many folks out there believe we're going to see below 6K? 0K. Oh, man. That's the worst case scenario, guys. It goes to 0. Absolute worst case. All right. So let's see here. I'm going to keep cycling through. Let me look at the coin market cap here real quick. Now, I don't use coin market cap for any kind of technical analysis per se, just because there's too many variables, new names being added, a lot of different things that could change this. But if you look at that, it's kind of interesting to see, if you did a normal chart analysis on something like this, if you take the low that we had here on that $250 billion mark, run it up to the high at 470. If you do a Fibonacci analysis on this, the 618 level puts it right around 330. And we're basically there. That also lines up well with this little consolidation. I guess you could call it a little bit of a base, right? That we saw for a couple of days between, what is that high here, around 335 down to, the 312 area. So we're right back to that, right? So if this was just kind of a normal chart, an independent name by itself, this would be an ideal place to look at it. This would be an ideal place for it to bounce from, and at least try to hold some support level. It's also a key Fibonacci level. So it's interesting to see that line up, but we have had a pretty steep pullback here. And also on the market cap, I am looking for a little bit of a bounce here near term. So 326, I think maybe 314, 315 is going to be the near-term low, and then we'll see a little bit of a rally if it doesn't bounce here today. So just interesting to note. But on the alts, I mean, it's pretty much the same picture, the same broader trend. And you can see here on the dominance, let me stack it here. It just looks easier for me to see it that way. It's cranking. It's frozen. There we go. And so you can see here, right, some of these alts clearly have been pulling in versus BTC here since the start of May. But the overall dominance hasn't shot up there, really. I mean, it's right around 38% now, 39%. And, that's not exactly huge of a, not a huge jump, but it's always begs the question, are we going to make a higher low? Are we going to start a new trend? And Bitcoin's going to be the place to be here for the next, near-term future weeks, month or so. All right, so let's get back to some of these other names. So I'm going to start keeping a list here. I'm going to just let you guys pick the ones that we want to go for. And so let me throw some names out, guys, and I will start jotting them down here on my side. I see Cardano. We'll do Cardano. I see ELF, IOTA, 0x, WAN, ZIL, VeChain. We did EOS. I will do Binance, Coin, Neo, OMG, STRAT. STRAT was trying to do some action here. Or Decred. Let's take a look at Decred. Let's see here. Tron. Let me do that one here. We'll do Link. Apology. Let's see. ICX, Walton. Let's do ARC. Zcash. NEBL. Yo. All right, we'll do YOYO. I haven't looked at that one. Zen. Well, Zen's a news mover, right? We know that was listed on Binance. The Zen chart was looking pretty good before then anyway, though. AST, or swap. All right, let's see here. All right. Looks like we got quite a few here. AION, NANO. We got Cardano on the list. All right, so I've got, looks like we got about 25 names. So let's start cycling through these and see if we can get through these first, and then we'll go from there and maybe pick a few more. So first off, Cardano. Looking at Cardano here, I'm liking Cardano as a potential bounce play just because it's so washed out here near term. Let me find it on Binance here. The USD pair. If you go to the daily chart, just very stretched to the downside here. At one point, it was right around that 19.3 cent mark. Even a bounce to resistance was like 20+%, right? If we can get that much on a daily, but even on the shorter term, right, you're seeing the 4-hour candle trying to put a big reversal there. A lot of volume is starting to come in. Near-term resistance is going to be about 70%, but again, this is going to be the big resistance to be watching on the Cardano dollar pair versus BTC was also washed out pretty good here on the short term. Here it is on Bittrex. We did undercut this support here a little bit, but it's still within the daily bar, so it'd be interesting to see if this holds. This is also a key Fibonacci level on this pullback, but again, looking for a little bit of outperformance versus BTC near term. If it does bounce, near term resistance is about 8% up or so on Cardano. Longer term, is it, do I still like it? It's definitely one to watch. It's like everything else. It's had that pullback. It's right back to this base. So if it can hold here and start to find a new support level in and around these levels, then certainly one to look at. But like most of these that we're going to look at, I mean, there is no confirmation until you get back above this moving average at least. And in a lot of cases, you're going to have to clear some resistance first to really start to turn the picture positive. So right now, most of these are just going to be kind of bounce attempts, if anything else. So ELF is right back to this base here. So it's trying to hold support here. It's going to be interesting to see if it does hold up here. It's actually looking pretty good. I mean, had this retracement right back to this base, but not bad on this daily chart. Could be a secondary, an entry point, a higher low per se, if it can hold up here. But again, it needs to confirm to the upside. Near term, again, a little bit oversold, not quite as deep as some of the other names. So we're trying to see a bounce attempt. Resistance is going to be very close on this guy here. So it's going to be this zone right there, this little bit of a breakout that it had here to the downside going into that moving average. So that's not a lot of room to the upside before you get some resistance. You're only talking 4 or 5% tops or so. Got an alert on Cardano there. So that's what I'm looking for on this guy. But in the big picture, the daily chart actually looks pretty decent there with potential support coming in. IOTA pulling back. IOTA was another big flyer here last couple of weeks and just really giving up a lot of that. It was at almost 260 here, and here we are back to $1.40 again at support here. Didn't retrace quite as much, and IOTA was really one of the first movers off the lows. It was one of those names that really started to run the strongest. IOTA, EOS, ZIL. I remember a bunch of those names were just really taking off. Icon early on in the rally before most of the other alts started to run. And so you're seeing this one really retrace right now. Let me see what the level is on this guy. It's not really lining up with anything particularly on that Fibonacci level, but it is lining up with a little bit of a support zone here on the price point. If you look at the dollar chart here, and I'll take a look at the BTC chart in a sec, but on the dollar side, this is kind of a must hold. If it can reverse here and start to build a new base, that would be positive there. IOTA Bitcoin, there's not a whole lot here. I mean, this is kind of the first support level. Then all the way down here is next level, and we did undercut that a little bit, and it's just really trying to bounce. You can see this one staged a pretty decent double top there. That was the signal, right? And you see these double tops with big volume coming in. I mean, look at the volume on those two spikes. That's usually a little bit of a warning flag, right? You see those attempts. That's just a lot of distribution showing up here at the highs. And sure enough, that's played out, and you're seeing a big pullback following that pattern there on the chart. And this yellow line I have here, I was already watching it. That's the neckline. Very typical action. You see a break of the neckline, then you see a test into resistance, and then it continues lower. And a lot of double tops play out that way. And whether it's a daily chart or a 4-hour, you'll see that happen. Pretty common. It's just the opposite of like a breakout when you get a double bottom and you get a throwback to the neckline. Same thing happens on a breakdown. All right, 0x. Bitcoin's approaching 7,600, so I'll take a look at that chart here in a sec. 0x showing a little life today. Not bad. Man, this name has just been so strong here. That's a nice recovery. Wow. Is there news on this? I haven't been keeping up with this one, but that's good. A lot of volume coming in on 0x. I'm not sure if there's anything going on there, but if you do know, please drop it on the comments here. But very interesting to see that this a big reversal bar. Look at this big engulfing candle. It finishes near the high. I mean, just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 days of price action erased in one daily bar there. So it's the Coinbase, yeah, Coinbase, the Coinbase speculation on 0x. Wow, I'm always suspect of those news driven moves, but hey, it's a pretty good pump. All right, let's go. WAN chain. So first level of support 2 days ago. Didn't bounce, sliced right through, hitting this next level and undercutting even that. So unless this really recovers here today and closes above that, still not looking good. It's tempting to buy when something is just that oversold. Me personally, other than like a short-term bounce trade, I would just be waiting on some sort of confirmation. But you're seeing a lot of volume come in here near the lows. So if you look at that, I mean, that's pretty massive volume here near the low. So it's telling me that maybe the sellers are giving up here, and we're going to start to see some buyers step in. But how far does it go? I mean, it's very oversold. A bounce could take you up, 15%, maybe a little bit higher before it starts to teeter out. And so that's what I'd be looking for. First resistance, if it can clear the 10 EMA on the 4-hour chart, then the next resistance is going to be that prior support that broke down. That's around 6,700 or so. ZIL. Looking at ZIL. Here, let me do something on my other screen here. Okay. 0x51 hacked. No. That was Verge. Oh, yeah. Verge. Oh, man, Verge. I'm not a believer in Verge long term, as you guys know, but man, Verge. It's just one thing after another with Verge. If you were holding Verge, I am sorry. But all right, so looking at ZIL, I was watching this little bit of a range that it was forming. It was trying to really establish a new base here to support, but it's really breaking down now. So got to get cautious there unless it really reverses quickly in the next day or so. This is going to be the new resistance level, of course. So going into this line here up until about the moving average, that's going to be the resistance zone to be watching here. So between here and here, but not looking good, unfortunately. This daily chart just continues to break down, step lower. You're seeing the moving average really starting to roll over now and looking like it's turning the corner again. That follows big volume reversal at the top, guys. You got to pay attention when you see these type of moves after an extended run. You get that massive green bar and then just a huge reversal after that. That's usually signs, sell signals that I look for. And at minimum, it tells you get cautious, start looking for where the new support base is, and if it breaks below that, either start scaling out or get out of the way, or don't buy into those bars. Certainly, I don't buy into those. So this one is breaking down a little bit. I'm going to be cautious on this guy and looking for more pullback on ZIL all around. VeChain. I do that every time. VeChain. And so I mentioned VeChain. I was watching this one here because it was putting in a nice upper trend line that it tested last week and tried to bounce off of, but then just really got tight here. And it's kind of do or die time for VeChain to bounce off of this support line and just got smacked, undercut it. And I expect now any rally attempts into that will be sold. And so that's going to be the new resistance level here in and around this zone near term. On the downside, first support area, first base is going to be here. We touched that today, trying to bounce off of that. So we'll see if that can hold below that. You're going to be looking at this next level of support, and that's quite a ways down from now. I mean, that's another 12% or so from current levels. So it's kind of in no man's land now. Now that it's broken down, it's bounced off of that first support level, but it's kind of in no man's land. So it's really hard to say near term what to do there. You're seeing some massive volume come in on this 4 hour. There's about 9 minutes left. So, hey, let's see if that turns green at least and maybe turns into a big hammer reversal. But again, I think it's a little bit of a bounce like a lot of these names. There it goes. It just turned green. And so a lot of these names are hitting that oversold bounce condition. Let's go to BTC here real quick. Take a look at the Bitcoin before we get going too much. Trying to see a rally attempt here. We are pushing back up to almost 7,600 on the 4 hour. You can see this last hour has been pretty positive since we started this stream. First resistance is going to be going into around 7,680, maybe 7,700. And then above that, this is going to be resistance here between that 78 to 8K. I would be surprised if we saw 8K personally. You know, it's bad when we're all hoping to get back above 8K, but I just think we're going to see a little bit of a bounce here, unfortunately. But like I said at the start of the stream, if we close above this support level that I've been watching, even though it undercut it, that would be positive. I mean, so that would be good to see if support shows up again below this, but it's got to move up quite a ways to close above that. So got to see how that plays out over the next few hours. We'll come back to Bitcoin before the stream's over. Binance Coin. So Binance Coin was holding up really well on this daily chart versus BTC, and I still like it here. Obviously, the dollar pair has taken a pretty big hit just with the whole market, but if you look at the breakout point here, it had that massive move up on volume. That was on news from Bitfinex, and a lot of these exchange coins had a pretty big rally. But Binance had the added benefit of it was already in a really tight equilibrium pattern here for a couple of weeks, just really tightening up, and volume just came in, pushed it right above. And now so far it's been holding above that breakout points. It's also holding above the moving average on the daily. Volume on the decline has been getting smaller and smaller. So, you know, all things just independently, this looks really good here. Obviously, Bitcoin has been in free fall, so you have to factor that in. But versus BTC, this one has been holding up very well. Now, Binance Dollar, not as good looking and was holding up as of yesterday, still finding some support in around that upper $13 range, but then just really rolled over and fell along with the rest of the market. So just depends on which pair you trade. But versus BTC, I'm still watching it here. I still think it looks good on that. And if we can see Bitcoin start showing a little bit of life, then I'm looking for new highs on Binance. It needs to close above the old highs here. It tried twice, but couldn't actually close above it. It did rally intraday between that, but if it can get back above here and close, then you're new high ground. And at that point, names can really start running, especially this long base that it has had here for about a month now, a little bit of a handle forming. So I'm going to keep an eye on this one for the more intermediate term. Definitely looking pretty good in the big picture. NEO. So looking at NEO, we were watching support here late last night. Did break below that, unfortunately. And so it just continues to dip lower on that dollar pair here. We're seeing a little bit of a support form, but a lot of these names are starting to bounce here right now. So that's good news. We're seeing some bounce action come in. But going into the bounce, $56 up until around the upper $57 mark. That's going to be your first resistance level to be watching here, and that lines up pretty well with this recent support. And then above that, about $60 here on the daily chart. And until it turns the corner and gets above 64, the bears are going to be in control here with this one. Let's see NEO BTC pair. Trying to hold support. It is below, but could still reverse here on the BTC pair. And this is kind of a must-hold level, a little bit of a descending triangle kind of look. And so gotta stay cautious there. Still living below the 10 EMA on that daily 4-hour chart. Seeing some volume come in. So maybe we do hold and bounce here, but not confirmed yet. It's all bounce attempts for now. Let me see here. NEO OMG. OMG. Was looking so good and just got real choppy here at the highs, and for the last several weeks just really been drifting lower and giving up a lot of that move. And here we are back to this breakout point from the lows, right? You had this little base that formed and had that breakout and fully retraced that. Now, if it finishes here, this would be a good long-term higher low, and then you'd be looking for the next leg up. But it's unfortunate it just gave up that entire move. But on the weekly chart, also would establish another higher low and be looking for another run higher if it can turn the corner here. But what I'm going to be looking for on a lot of these, especially going into the next few weeks, is these daily charts, right? Do they hold support here? Do they start to establish some reversal patterns here at the lows, looking for double bottoms? You're looking for inverted head and shoulder patterns, or big move off the bottom that engulfs like several days worth of pullback, similar like what we saw with EOS, in a few months back, right, where you had the big pullback, and it was like, where's this going to end? Where's this going to end? Then you get this reversal hammer, and then you had a single day that just undid a couple of almost 2 weeks worth of selling pressure. And so those type of big moves off the bottom, when that day showed up, that was the biggest volume we had seen for quite some time. So unless you see a day like that, then you're looking for reversal patterns on the daily chart. You're looking for double bottoms. You're looking for some of these tweezer bottoms on the candlesticks. You're looking for inverted head and shoulders. You're looking for falling wedges, trend lines being broken. And so that's kind of what I look for on the dailies. Oh, let's keep going. Stratus. Stratus was trying to show some life here recently. How's it looking? Yeah, hit resistance here. Was trying, saw some volume coming in, but just could not break above this resistance here. That's what I was watching. And so till that happens, got to stay cautious with this one. It is testing that low again, had that big volume move right into resistance, testing that low. So we'll see if that holds, but that's going to really be the test, that 7,500 Satoshi level. Decred. Finally seeing some selling. Maybe. So this one has just been marching way higher. You can see the volume's finally starting to show up here a little bit. On the daily, let me clear that arrow for you guys. This blue line that I have here is this prior resistance way back here in July of last year. But what I was watching here on Decred is you can see multiple attempts at this level here, and then here recently this year. And when it finally broke above, produced a pretty decent rally up to the next level of resistance, about 48%, and has been one of the few winners here in the last 2 weeks. I mean, this is 10 days, 40% move versus BTC, and so has more than offset the pullback that we've seen on the Bitcoin chart. So very interesting to see this. It's bouncing into the next resistance level. Then above that, you're looking at an attempt to make new highs, but I'm thinking we still a little bit of a pause first now that it's run up to that next level on the Decred side. Don't know what's driving this. I know they're doing some changes for later half of this year on the project side. I have my suspicions that, hey, this might be another name that gets added to some new exchanges. Right now, the primary exchanges are Poloniex and Bittrex. And so if it gets added to a couple, we've seen this before. You get that kind of front running and then the big spike. I'm not saying that's what's happening here, but would not surprise me if we do see something along those lines here. Tron. So I've been watching two lines on Tron here, this broader uptrend. And I did mention earlier that, we had this first top pulling back, and you don't want to see this form as a new lower high because that would be cautionary here. But ultimately, if it's holding above this moving average and this prior base until it gives way, then you got to give it the benefit of the doubt there. So far, the momentum is still in favor of the bulls. It's trying to hold some support here near term. You go to the 4-hour chart, some volume's really starting to come back in off of this pullback. So still, again, Tron has been one of the more resilient names here in the last couple of days, but it is pulling in a little bit following that breakout that it had over the weekend. So I'd be cautious here right now. Personally, I think it's just a bounce, and I think we're going to see some more downside. But hey, if it takes out this level, then all bets are off, and you're going to retest these most recent highs. 0x. Yeah, we looked at 0x here just a second ago, and it was going crazy. So looking at 0x, Good stuff. Good stuff. All right. So we did Decred, we did Tron. We've got a few more names, and then I will open it up for a few of those guys for you guys here. So Link. Link was looking pretty good, broke out of that downtrend, had a nice little attempt here to set up and tested the support line twice, but then just really rolled over. And check this out. I mean, you've seen this so much lately. We saw it in, in Elf, we saw it in Bread, we saw it in some of these other names, but this volume here, we saw it in Nav here recently, right, where it just gets quiet and then out of nowhere, just massive volume, and then just kind of goes away. And that just tells me, I mean, it's not manipulation per se, but it's like the bots are, this is like the next target of choice. And you're seeing just unusual volume changes there. And then it just drops off and it's like no volume anymore, right? So very unusual action there. You've seen that in Nav. Saw that happen here, right? Like quiet volume and then out of nowhere, just this massive rise in volume. And so just crazy to see that happen here. You're seeing Bread, I think, did that here recently. Yeah, another one where it has this big volume spikes. And you've seen it before, right? It has like this volume here, and then it goes away, and then it's back. It's like, okay. Hey, it's liquidity. That's what we like, right? We want liquidity. All right, let's keep going. Ontology. How's Ontology looking? This one was holding up relatively well compared to most of these other names. It's still not looking bad. I mean, versus Bitcoin, of course, on the USD pair, Ontology is rolling over just like everything else. But versus Bitcoin, it's holding par for the most part. It's building a little bit of a range here that it's been bouncing back and forth between. So we'll want to see this level hold here near term. Below that, then your next level of support is right around there. That's about, what is that, 15, 16% down from current prices. So it'd be interesting to see if this holds. And ultimately, if it can break out above this near-term resistance, then I'd be looking at some new highs here. That'd kind of be the early signal if it can close above that. So all around, the daily chart is not looking too bad here, but it is starting to roll over a little bit. So I'd like to see some momentum come in here pretty soon. Walton coin. Okay, rule number one, if you make a crypto, you have to exclude the word coin in it. Only Bitcoin can have coin. I'm kidding. All right. So, man, Walton has just kind of really retraced this entire move. Just it had this rally attempt here a few days ago. Was looking pretty good, but you can see that just sold right into that. A lot of volume, even though it's a green day. That's a lot of volume selling. If you zoom in and kind of look underneath the surface, you can see here, right? You had that big volume spike and then even bigger red selling and just totally reverse that. And so, if you're trading breakouts and that sort of thing, you saw it happen back here, right? When you see those moves where you see the big volume spike and you buy a breakout, if you see it reverse with even more volume on the downside, that's a failed breakout, and usually it's a sell signal. So, that's what happened. You're seeing this thing follow through to the downside. And so far, no love for the Walton here yet. Watching this support, see if it can hold, but it's basically coming right back down to the April lows here. So see if that holds those levels first. Icon. Oh, Icon was looking so good too, and just rolling over here a little bit and just really starting to accelerate to the downside. It is stretched in the near term. It needs to bounce here a little bit, but right now there's just going to be a lot of overhead resistance. And even if we do bounce, kind of going into this level is going to be the big wall that I see happening on the bounce. That's about 10% higher from current levels. On the daily, that lines up well with that 10 EMA. So you would see by the time it bounces, the 10 EMA would be a little bit lower. And so I would be cautious on that one near term until it can clear and reverse this trend and start getting back above that level. That's what I'm looking for. I am looking for a bounce here. So when I say near term, I'm talking the next, next days. Today, tomorrow, we'll probably see a little bit of a bounce. But beyond that, got to get cautious here. Unfortunately, Icon's not looking very strong anymore. But it'll change my mind if it gets above that. What is that? About 4,100 or so. ARC. So you got to watch ARC here. So I've been talking about ARC, and it's still setting up. What I like about ARC, ARC has one of the most interesting weekly charts for sure. And it's testing the lower end of this line again. We had a test here, and then 2 weeks ago, we tested the low end of that line. We tried to break out, couldn't close above it. So you can see very clear level of resistance here on this weekly. I mean, 4 weeks in a row, almost exactly the same price. It just couldn't close above. But this chart is getting very narrow. And so if it's going to break out, and we're going to see that happen here in the next 2 weeks, it's going to happen here soon. So if it's going to break out here, it needs to hold this current level that it's at now. It's right at the lower end of this line. You're going to want to see this thing start testing the upside again. Going back to the daily chart here, this would be an ideal place for it to find some support. And it's tempting here. I got to say, I'm tempted to add to some ARC here right on this support line, because at that point, your risk reward ratio is pretty clear. You don't have to give it a whole lot to the downside before you know that, hey, that's not going to hold. Support's being lost there. And on the upside, you're looking at, before it even breaks out, it's close to 20% move, and it's still within the pattern here. So more of an intermediate term chart that I'm watching, but still liking that setup on ARC long term. Let's see here, Zcash. So let's go to Zcash dollar first. So we all know that this was the Gemini spike, the addition to the new exchange. It actually started trading this week. A little bit of sell the news scenario, not unusual, typical action, but this also had the added headwinds of the broader market pulling in. So right now it's just kind of rolling over. I don't usually like the way these rounded tops look, a little bit bearish to me. So I would be cautious here. On the downside, I mean, this would be an ideal place for it to hold. Let me see what this retracement level is here. That's right around the 618. So could set up for a higher low here and then go from there. But right now I'd be looking for confirmation. Not really seeing that yet. Seeing a little bit of a bounce attempt here, but a lot of that was, again, news driven, right? And when you see that news, it's really, is it really that sustainable when you see kind of a news rally as opposed to kind of its own move off of the lows? I mean, I'd prefer those versus these news driven events. NEBL. What's going on, NEBL? Right back to the long-term support here. Testing it, must hold level for NEBL, man. If it breaks below this, there is really not a lot of support much below. I mean, you can see this is a long-time support on the Binance chart. I know it has more history on some other exchanges, but Binance is really where a lot of the volume trades now. So below this, I mean, you don't have a lot of support. So I'd be cautious. If it breaks below, then you're looking at, maybe another 30% move or anywhere in between there. It'd be in no man's land at that point. So it's got to hold here. And now, I guess the positive, I wouldn't say it's very positive. It's kind of bearish, but the positive is RSI is back down to 30. So it is starting to hit a little bit of a oversold condition. Same thing on the 4-hour, was way down here in the teens on the RSI. And so it's due for a bounce. The fact that it's right at support would make sense that you see a little bit of a bounce here. Resistance is going to be about 10% up and then about 17% up. So wouldn't be a bad bounce trade. And especially, if you like the project longer term, then these are kind of the long-term dips that you look for, but we don't want to see it break below that. YOYO. That's a great name. YOYO. Oh, YOYO. The volume, I've looked at this one. I've maybe taken 1 or 2 attempts of trading this over the last couple of months, and it's just it's a tough trade. I mean, one, it's lower volume. You can see how volatile it is. I mean, the daily spread on some of these candles is pretty wide. I mean, that's a small candle, relatively speaking, and it's a 12% spread. This one's a 20% spread. So these just make tough trading because you can't keep tight stops on names like this because you'll get shaken out unless you're buying the dip. But that being said, it's not looking very strong. It's just really rolling over. You're seeing the price volume accelerate to the downside. It is hidden a little bit of a support zone right now. So again, this would be the place you want to see YOYO hold. Otherwise, then next base down is around that 1100 level or so. I'm looking at the list here. I think we're almost done. Not too bad. Lisk. Lisk has had some attempts. Now, what I don't like, even though it's not at the highs, it's still not good, right? We've had a rally attempt here. We had a breakout here, pulled back, another lower high, and it started to roll over again. So Lisk is not looking strong anymore. I was really liking this setup up until about a week ago. It was looking pretty good, but just starting to roll over here a little bit. There is a little trend line establishing now to the downside. You can see this, a little bit of a neckline on a head and shoulders type pattern. Now, typically head and shoulders show up at the highs. It's a reversal pattern near the top, but still not looking good all around. Just the fact that it's kind of rolling over here. So I'd be cautious on this one until it can get back above. And I actually have an alert set on my list chart here from a couple of days ago. I was watching to see if it can close back above this, but it didn't. So for now, just going to wait and see. AION. AION, another name that I was watching, was looking really good and just kind of pulled back, and here is just kind of rolling over and back. I mean, almost, I wouldn't say fully retraced, but almost. I mean, right back to these lows, right? I mean, historical lows for this name. You can see here the low, the initial low was there, and we bottomed out, fully retraced middle of March, and we're almost there again. I mean, almost touched it here today. So not looking very strong. Will it bounce here again? Probably. I mean, it's just a little bit oversold near term, but now that it's broken down, you're going to see some resistance going into that 3,000 level or so. Nano. Let me go to the daily. You guys are getting the routine here. So I'm looking at the dailies first. The dominant trend always takes precedence. And unless it's one of these transition periods like this, right, where it's kind of going sideways, you look at the broader trend first. Like the daily here was up. Now it's clearly been in the downtrend. That just takes precedence here. But then once this is getting to oversold conditions here, and man, look at this. How many days is that? So that is 20 days with three, I guess you can count this one, 4 green days in a row, 4 green days out of 20. And so it's due for a bounce. It's very oversold here. RSI on the 4-hour was down here near 15 earlier today, but is it bullish? Absolutely not. It's not showing any sort of strength here. It's just stair-stepping, grinding, gets way lower. And it's already undercut, these lows from back here in February. So not strong at all. AST. So looking at AirSwap, I was looking at this name earlier. Let me highlight these a different color for you guys. It's holding support there. So let's see if it can break, hold support. But I'm looking at this level above as a potential next resistance. So for a trade would maybe be a good bounce into this upper resistance. And then at that point, it's kind of wait and see, does it clear? And that's around 5,000 Satoshi level or so. So this might not be a bad potential trade entry here because it's right at the base here. So I'm going to have to take a look at this one here. Going to the 4-hour, it's definitely not confirming there yet and did break below some near-term support. So will be on my watch list. Okay, so I've covered all the names that I had on the initial list here. And so if you've just joined, thank you for being here today, guys. Hit that like button. Let me recap the names that we have covered, just in case you were wondering. I covered the big 3 initially, so BTC, ETH, Litecoin, then I did Bitcoin Cash, and then I did Cardano, ELF, IOTA, 0x, WAN, ZIL, VeChain, Binance, NEO, OMG, STRAT, Decred, Tron, Link, Ontology, Walton, Icon, ARC, Zcash, NEBL, YOYO, AirSwap, Lisk, AION, and NANO. So we did quite a few. You guys want to see Zen here real quick? Now Zen was on news and it is pulling back. And again, that's the thing with news-driven events. It's like unless you're in when it happens and you sell into that, they're really tough to play. Generally not sustainable just because you see the big retracements, and it's basically right back to where it was yesterday. So you kind of have to discount that whole move there. Yeah, I did Ripple too. I missed that one. So I did Ripple before Bitcoin Cash or right after Bitcoin Cash at the very beginning. Thank you for reminding me. I didn't do lumens. Nobody asked for stellar lumens. If you did, I missed it. I apologize. Let's take a look at that because I was watching a head and shoulder pattern forming on lumens, and it was keeping me cautious here. Lumen dollar. Here we go. No, maybe it was the BTC chart. In any case, let me find it on Binance. So going to the daily. Yeah, I was just seeing this three kind of peaks, lower highs starting to form. Really picked up once it broke below support, and now it's just bouncing right into that resistance, living below that 10 EMA. So not the strongest of names right now. I was liking it here, was setting up here near the highs, was looking good, potentially forming a cup and handle here. And so it was on the watch list, but then it just started to break down and not doing anything with it right now. It's just kind of living below resistance. Yeah, we did WAN. I think it was about the 6th or 7th name in, maybe a little bit more than that. When I'm done here, I'll go ahead and drop the name list on the comments, so that way you guys can get the list. Let me see here. Rec. I haven't looked at Request Network in a while. Let me go to Binance to get more volume there. So yeah, this was another failed breakout here. Did try to rally above, just bounced right into resistance, and it's been pulling back ever since. It's right back at the support level. And so again, a must-hold level for this guy. So many of these names have done that. They're right back at some key support. Not looking strong by any means. You can see just the downtrend has been pretty brutal here for the last couple of weeks. I mean, giving up all the gains we saw in April, and not just this name, but so many names, and just right back, and in some cases below. And so it's been a pretty rough couple of weeks. But we'll see if this is the level it's got to hold here. Yeah, we did Tron. We did Tron. I would see here. Tron was about 2/3 of the way in after Decred. Tron. All right. I'm going to do a few more, guys, and then I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. Let's take a look at Bitcoin here real quick. Back to 7,600. Let me go to this chart here. The Coinbase side, seeing a little bit of rally attempt from oversold conditions on this 4-hour chart. If it can close above in the very near term, if it can close above this $7,700 mark, that's the first resistance level I'm watching. That was the high of this prior candle here. So this bar here has the high, at least on GDAX, 77.14, 77.15. And so getting above that would really be a little bit of a near-term break above resistance. And then ultimately going into 7,800, 7,900 is going to be the level to be watching here. But for now, it's just a bounce. You can see on the 1 hour, we basically bouncing right into the 10 EMA again. And for this most recent leg down, that has been the resistance level. I mean, that's been the wall. Bounce attempt there, bounce attempt there, bounce attempt, bounce attempt. I mean, just very clear that that moving average has been the level of resistance. We tried here yesterday to start turning the corner. It was looking like a potential double bottom. There was some divergence showing up here on the RSI on the hourlies, so that was looking positive, but couldn't get above. And then we saw a pretty big volume break to the downside here today. And so now that's going to be resistance going on the way up. All right. Yeah, I did VeChain. I did VeChain, kind of one of the earlier names. Let me see here. Getting smacked down. Yes, it is. Chain coin. All right. Confession time. How many of you guys are still holding your chain coin? I didn't buy any chain coin. I missed out on that, man. I really did. Totally missed out on chain coin. Oh, man. Okay, let's see here. What was I going to look at? There was a name you guys threw out there and totally distracted me. Oh, Digibyte. Looking at Digibyte. Chain coin hodl. Why no super chat? You know, I just forget. I should probably turn that on. I would appreciate the super chat, but I'll try to get to as many names as I can in the meantime. So yeah, this one's actually been holding up relatively well. I had that pretty good rally off the lows here last month, and while many names have retraced pretty deeply, this one's actually looking pretty good here. I'd be watching this kind of near-term overhead trend line. Closing above that would be very positive here. A little bit of a double bottom type action here, but it's got to close above this near term, and then resistance is going to be around 511 or so, but not bad. And you can see this rally was pretty strong, so good one to be watching here. Okay, I just did lumens. Golem. That's a name from yesteryear. Looking at Golem. So, they had this big rally, last month when they went live and all that stuff, and just kind of normal retracement here, like a lot of these names. With 3 weeks in now, it's just been pulling back. So you can see this 20 days, so almost 3 weeks of pullback. Golem is a tough one. I mean, long term, I know last year was kind of a high flyer. Long term, I mean, this just bounced right up into resistance. Is it going to be I think there's still a lot of bag holders, and I think it's going to see some overhead resistance. But if it could kind of form a little handle here and start to rally and get back above, that'd be a significant break, right? That'd be a pretty big break above resistance here in the near term, but that's kind of more intermediate term. Right now, I'm not seeing any signs of strength on it other than this is just kind of retracing just like everything else. Quantum, I didn't do quantum. Let me go to the daily here. Man, just cutting support here, right back, to these lows here, just really testing these most recent lows. Just not looking strong, rolling over. This is a project I'm definitely keeping an eye on long term. I think it's one of the top platform plays to be watching, especially this year. They're rolling out a lot of updates and doing some things to make it multi-language programming language, and so one to watch. But certainly near term, it's just stair-stepping its way lower. It's making a new lower low here, and so the momentum is definitely not in favor of the bulls here. Just did rec Ethereum Classic. I haven't looked at that one. How many Ethereum Classic believers do we have out there? Again, another name. Failed breakout attempt. It was looking nice, very classic ascending triangle base, big volume breakout, and then just rolled over and gave it up. And since then, just really pulling back. And so failed breakouts are usually not a good sign. This was really the signal, right, when it undercut the breakout point, closing below the moving average, and just started to roll over at that point. Okay, I did Cardano, was one of the early ones I did. C#. Yeah, I think Quantum, they're doing C right now. They're doing Solidity for you ETH developers. They're doing C++ later, and then C#. So they're rolling them out. QuantStamp. Yeah, let's take a look at that one. That was a trade I took a short trade on, not short, short-term trade on that one here earlier last week. Just took a quick 10% move on this little pump that it had. But it's right back here. It's actually not too bad. It's been holding up relatively well versus BTC. I'm kind of making a higher low here. The volume on this pullback has been relatively light compared to the big volume on the way up. Now, this has been, affected by Palm Beach, so a lot of that is the pumping from that. So you see the big moves on the way up, and so take that with a grain of salt, right? Obviously, there's a reason why it's doing that, but the chart by itself actually doesn't look bad. It's a little bit of a pullback to a higher low. One to keep an eye on here, but got to get back above the moving average near term. It's testing it right now. So very interesting to see RSI came right back to the lows. But yeah, it was just a quick trade for me on, last week during this little leg up, quick 10%. 2,700 was my target on the way up. And of course, it went above it a little bit, and then I held half the position, and then I went up again, and then I just said, okay, I'm out. So 2,700 wasn't a bad little trade. Dent. Oh, man. All right. I think that's going to be it, guys. Been about an hour, 20 minutes now. I'm going to take a break, go get a bite to eat, some more coffee, and be back to the chart shit a little bit. So thanks for joining, everybody. Till next time, take care.